Peace, everyone. We're back after a hiatus of a few months with a very interesting interview that Father gave to visiting guests in 1950 entitled World Progress Toward Universal Brotherhood. In many ways, this message is quite appropriate for the position we find ourselves in world history today, and many of the things going on that may confuse or confound us. I will post separately a commentary video on this message in the next few days. So enjoy this message today, and in the next few days look for a commentary on this message that will address some of the themes that Father brings out, and also some of the ambiguity about the status of family and worldly family in relation to the peace mission, as well as celibacy and anti-racialism. Those themes will come out in the commentary, as well as some personal reflections about the peace mission's success and failure in realizing some of the things that are called for in this message and in Father Divine's message in general. Peace. World Progress Toward Universal Brotherhood, an interview granted by Father Divine. Informal conference between Father, Mother Divine, and a group of business people in Father's private office study of the Divine Hotel Tracy, 36th and Chestnut Streets, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Wednesday, February 15th, 1950, ADFD, 2:35 p.m. Just prior to the serving of the Holy Communion dedicatory banquet, some of the many invited guests had paused in their tour of the hotel to greet Father and Mother Divine in Father's private office study, and while there, Father invited them to take seats. It was here, while partaking of light refreshments, that this informal conference had its birth, and great indeed was the appreciation of the guests in having the opportunity to converse so informally with the Savior of all mankind, and to hear the priceless words of wisdom which fell from his lips in answer to the various comments made and questions asked him. The conversation commenced with Mr. Lowell, attorney, speaking firstly as follows. Attorney Lowell, you have made a wonderful place of abode for your followers in this hotel. I was most impressed by its immaculate cleanliness and all of its comfort. Father, thank you. Attorney Lowell, I understand a great many students are staying here. Father, yes, that's right. There are many university students who reside here. At this point, one of the guests asked a question concerning just how the followers feel in regard to the life they now live, and just how does life in the peace mission movement vary from the ordinary separate family life, to which Father replies, We unite in one family. I have united every family. It is something like our national government. A good many people believe in the states' rights, but we believe in our national constitution, and the states, the United States rights, the federal rights of the United States to control all states in the Union. And we know that it is unselfish. We have to make the sacrifice of some of our individual fancies and pleasures and individual rights, apparently, for the purpose of establishing the unselfish universal rights. Now we believe in the universal brotherhood of man, and we believe in democracy, and we know that each and all of the kindreds of the earth shall eventually be united together, and there will be no more divisibility among the nations, languages, tongues, and peoples, and neither divisibility of languages. But to be one of the universal brotherhood, we have to relinquish some of our personal rights, as they may be termed, and yet we are united together in the unity of spirit, of mind, of aim, and of purpose, and all have the same rights. We have those of different families united. It has been looked upon that I did not leave them their family rights, but it is absolutely untrue. We have those of the different families united in the church, the movement, and of course we are not confined to the movement alone. We are representing the citizenry of a real democracy, embracing all of the peoples of the nation. So it is not so much as you might take it to be as it is. There are those here today, you see, that have their families, and they adhere to their families and their family rights. But yet, when they recognize the universal brotherhood now and the consciousness of the fatherhood of God, they bring an abolition to the divisibility of lineages and races and creeds and colors, and they unite together consolidatedly. There will be no more a division, because they are of one spirit and of one mind, and they can then live in unison together. Mother Divine: Father, in view of what you were saying, take for instance this hotel. Many people could not even own their own homes if they were in families, but by uniting together they can own such a beautiful hotel as this. Father: It is true. Mr. Kaplan: Father, what seems to be holding back the progress of man inasmuch as he fights against uniting as the brotherhood of man? Father: I might deem it to be preconceived ideas and opinions, tradition and personality, personal desire to cling to or have claim on that or the other for fear of uniting and losing their own sovereign rights. The different countries of the world have heretofore refused to partially unite, in a way of speaking, and therefore they have brought about a greater line, a bigger line of demarcation between themselves and other nations. But the time is near at hand. They will come to the recognition of the long sought-for brotherhood of man, and when this is established, eventually they will learn that they cannot lose by giving. According to one of my oft-rehearsed assertions or statements, whichever, give to the world the best you have, and the best will come back to you. You cannot lose by giving. Conscientiously and sincerely I can say I hold no claim on anything and refuse to allow myself to hold any. Of course, I do not say everybody must necessarily carry that system out as I have, but I do relinquish all claims of personal obligations or claims of things, I mean to hold myself and accept of my own. Relinquishing these claims, I can put forth into expression that which you all see and hear and can enjoy through and by others, recognizing that universal brotherhood of which we are now speaking. So when we get together at that place in consciousness, to be willing to relinquish or sacrifice our own for the benefit of the infinite whole, we hold no claim on that of our own, and yet we possess as much as we can enjoy. I believe when we learn to do away with our own claims or claim of self, of nation, of country, of state, and the like, and universalize our thoughts and our minds, I believe we will be making great strides toward bringing about the lasting peace we all would enjoy having. Today you see those who adhere to my teaching as a slight sketch and a reflection of a percent of a fraction of a percent of a grain, I might say, of what we are going to have universally. When they adhere to the truth as exemplified and as propagated and promulgated, they become to be self-reliant and self-respecting, law-respecting and law-abiding citizens, and they become to be independent and free. Not a true follower of mine who adheres to my teaching is on the relief rolls, and they live self-supporting and self-respecting lives, and not only those who are called followers of mine, but others who are coming to this place in consciousness where they too are unifying. It is not necessary to be called a follower of mine or a member of our churches or anything of that sort to be a partaker of this of which we are emphasizing. But it is the privilege of all people to take and partake of the fundamentals that we emphasize, that which is free for all. The different churches now automatically are coming together. No doubt you have read through the press recently how the different churches are coming together. And when this is done, there will be no more such an experience as we had in the late World War. There will be no more such hideous crimes committed as the warmongers did in this last World War, all because of prejudice, division, inequality, and strife. But it is beautiful to look forward, to see and know that we shall live in peaceful and quiet resting places all over this wide, extended plain. I stress it when I said it. But what keeps the people from coming together is the different preconceived prejudices of tradition, orthodoxy, and other division that set as a barrier of prohibition to prohibit the people from uniting together. I believe it takes not only religion, not only that which is called religion, but we must be educated out of divisibility into the unity of the spirit, of mind, of aim, and of purpose, even socially and politically and morally and otherwise, to bring about a closer relationship between man and man. But preconceived prejudices and individualities exemplified among the nations, those tendencies and those expressions are what causes so much persecution. We are calling for the unity of nations, of languages, of tongues, and of peoples. We look forward to see brotherhood, democracy, Christianity, Americanism, and Judaism as synonymous, established where one will not look upon the other critically and abusively because of tradition and orthodoxy, neither for the lack of understanding, and we will understand each other better. Mr. Kaplan: Then you believe then that traditions and customs are something that should be put aside? Father: Well, I do, in a way. We should learn not to set up our whole traditions as the ideal if something else is brought into being more profound and more essential and more logical. If we adhered to the tallow candle days and the flintstone days, we would not believe in electric lights. See the mystery? So therefore, when something comes better, bigger, greater, and far advanced in this advanced civilization, I think we should accept of it spiritually, intellectually, morally, and scientifically, and from every angle of expression. If something can be produced better than what we actually know traditionally and orthodoxly, don't you think so? Mr. Kaplan: Do you think the world is ready for that change? Father: Well, of course we have to get ready by presenting facts in the actuated words of expression and by educating the people into it. That is my belief. Mr. Dexter: Do you think we are making progress, Father? Father: I do. Mr. Busby: It is good these days to hear someone with so much confidence in the future. There is so much going on. Father: Over and above every seeming undesirable condition, I know positively, according to my conviction, that we will have a better world in which to live than we have been living in. Of course, this last world war caused the lives of millions to be destroyed, as, so to speak, but many inventions and discoveries from a scientific point of view have been brought out through and by this last world war, but civilization advances. Mr. Kaplan interposing: At the cost of too many lives, I'm afraid. Father: It does. We want to eliminate all of that by scientific methods, by seeking the way to eliminate such according to the plan and purpose from the beginning of the creation. Mr. Kaplan: Then do you think that the hydrogen bomb should be developed on that account? Father: Well, not necessarily. I did say that he, Truman, is a minister of God, and he spares not the sword in vain, but it does not necessarily mean in my consideration that the H-bomb will be used. Mr. Kaplan, it is a frightening realization. Father, if the H-bomb is used, why, of course, it might apparently destroy our civilization, apparently, because greater and bigger and better could be in the making. But as it was with the A-bomb, I tried to get a message directly to the Japanese government about 4 months before it was dropped, demanding their unconditional surrender or else be extinct or obliterated. Personally, as a person, I do not claim to have had any government secrets from that viewpoint, as that of a man, to know what was in the making and what had been invented. But I knew that unless they surrendered unconditionally, many might wish they would have, for they would repent of it. Of course, I sent a message to the other governments, to the German government and also to Mussolini, to surrender unconditionally. Now, if they could have and would have only known that there was some power bigger and greater than they, and would have surrendered unconditionally immediately, they may have saved hundreds of thousands of lives by so doing. It is better to surrender than to cause the destruction of the lives of millions and then be obliged to surrender and be brought into subjection. At this point, Father laughs the laughter of God. Mr. Kaplan, how do you account for the fact that these people in Germany, these leaders who have since the war and since the Nuremberg trials came out and gone to jail and are now being tried, have been finding their way to freedom all over the world, and they have caused such misery? This one woman that I read about who grafted skin from men who had tattoos on their body was left scot-free comparatively to what she had done. She had made men suffer so. There have been few who have been heralded in the newspapers, men who caused misery of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and yet were left to go scot-free from it for some measly jail sentence. Why? Father, I say retribution is sure and retribution is assured. It may not be in one way, it may not be in another, but retribution will come to those to whom it is due. Little would you have thought years ago that there would have been so many, so quickly brought before the tribunal court of the world, which is to say before justice, and convicted, and would have been obliged to pay the penalty they did from the German government. Who would have thought that such equity and justice would have been performed in bringing about equity and justice to the war criminals? They thought they could get away with it. It is wonderful. I recall sending a message to the representatives of the different governments at the time they were about to invade Czechoslovakia. No doubt the majority of you have seen or read the gist of my message that was sent to them, and also to our representatives here, to propose the purchase of coveted Czechoslovakian territories. This proposal was made to ward off the inhuman warfare and bloodshed at that time. It is wonderful. If they could or would have taken cognizance of the insignificance of myself as a person, and realized that there was something bigger, better, and greater than that of the personage in question, and just considered the logicalness of that proposal, and would have only done it then and there, thousands and even, I venture to say, millions of lives would have been saved. Then, when they would not accept of that proposal, as an unconcerned party, I proposed the unification of the three Americas. It is wonderful. Because I could see that the Axis were trying to invade all of the European countries and to take all of the other countries, no doubt they would have been ready to come to the Western Hemisphere of this part. So I proposed the unification of the three Americas for peace. There are many thoughts to be considered along those lines, especially when it reaches out into the world in which we live, the world of science, of invention, and the world of society and the like. But when this proposal was made, the unification of the three Americas, some thought, how can they and where will they get so much money to unite the three Americas, or at least to purchase the three Americas. I said I propose the unification of the three Americas, or I propose the purchase of the three Americas. It would be marvelous, and it will be marvelous, when all of the nations of the earth shall be one big democracy. Mr. Kaplan says, then we will be living in a utopia. Father Divine says, and that is what we are looking forward to. Mr. Kaplan, yes, that is what we are looking forward to. Mother Divine, so many are wondering, how can it be the way the world is today? But you explained that so beautifully in your message the other day, Father. Father, yes, it is true. The great thought is for the people to come together and be one. That is why it is nothing impossible for me or mine to do, because we are one. Mr. Blake, yes, you do contribute a great deal to that, Father, a great deal. Father, I pray they may be one, said Jesus, even as we are one. And when the people are united together as one man at Jerusalem, as one family, as they were called to be in the beginning through Judaism, in Judaism they were called to be one. Many drifted from it, but they were called to be one even in Judaism. It is wonderful. And we are now looking forward to see that atonement established so effectively for the future, it will be impossible for anything to retard or prohibit us from doing that which we may imagine to do. We read back in the Old Bible, a good many of the Christian preachers don't preach from the Old Bible so much as they do from the New Testament, the Christian preachers, but I believe in the foundation of our religion as that of the foundation of the world, which comes through and by the Old Bible. It is wonderful. So they taught to be one. But at one time God said the people is one. Now not anything will be restrained from them to do what they have imagined to do. If that could be done in wickedness and unrighteousness, how much more can things be done in righteousness by the power of God if we are one? It is wonderful. So we are looking forward to that day when we shall have one great big universal sovereignty of democracy. Mr. Dexter, we hope. Mr. Kaplan, you certainly have it in your peace mission. Father, thank you. Mr. Lowell, yes, you have. Father, well, I believe the majority of the people are coming to that place in consciousness where they can see the significance of unification and harmonization. Mrs. Robert Snellenberg, Father, when you speak of the people realizing it, do you think that there are any other movements or institutions which are fostering the same idea you condone? Father, well, there are some coming into it even recently, according to the press. I have seen articles in the press where the people are endeavoring to bring an abolition to divisibility. In other words, division among the different religions. They are calling for the federation of the different churches, both of the Hebrew religion, Judaism, and of Christianity, and we are working forward to that end. I may not be seen or heard personally, but that is what we are going to do. We shall be one people, and there shall not be a divisibility of religions to bring about strife and confusion. But eventually, when it is fully established, as will be, they will get away from isms, from the isms that spell division, and they will no longer feel as if they must sever themselves from you because you may be a Catholic or of the Jewish faith, or because you may be of the Presbyterian faith or any other religion. We shall be one common people. It is wonderful. Father suddenly smiles and says, I should not talk so much along that line because you get me stirred up. Merriment resounds. Then Mr. Kaplan says, I have looked forward to this. Father, on those terms I am at home. I know from whence they came, and I know where they are going. It is wonderful. Mr. Kaplan, well, I have looked forward to talking to you for a long while now. Father, thank you. Mr. Kaplan, I wanted to hear your opinion on those things. Father: Yes, it is wonderful. Well, the Spirit will bring it up. Any question you desire to ask, even though it may be seemingly controversial. But if one has an open mind, I believe we can get together on terms of the advancement of brotherhood and international cooperation. Mrs. Robert Snellenberg, smiling: How do you open a closed mind? Father: Well, that is a question. I said, give us something that would be convincing to the conscious thinking person whose mind is closed, something that is far-reaching enough to let that person know that he cannot close up in a clamshell and express universal brotherhood, or cannot be actually successful and prosperous, healthy and happy, and live in self and to self only. Mr. Busby, smiling: I know a man who, I think, could be classed as having a closed mind. A friend of mine said he has changed his opinions on certain things, and I said, no, I think he has just rearranged his prejudice. Again there is laughter. Then Mr. Dexter says, some define a prejudice as an opinion that has ripened too soon. Mr. Germain: Well, if they visit our places, they will open up. Mr. Dexter: It is certainly true. Mother Divine: Well, anyone who has been around Father and heard him speak as I have, you would marvel how Father meets every individual on his own plane. It is something marvelous to behold in every walk of life. Father: It is written, be able to comprehend with all saints. In other words, it does not necessarily mean be able to comprehend with all people that are in heaven. It could have been said, be able to comprehend with all people with whom you come in contact. Everybody has something good about them. There is a little good in every little bad. Father smiles. So I can comprehend with that. As I have often said, the different religions, every religion, I believe, is founded upon some good principle, some trait of someone being conscientious and sincere and having been converted. We often speak of the Methodist Church as it is today and established in America, how John Wesley and Charles Wesley came here somewhat as religious radicals, away from their then established church, the Church of England. But yet there was something there, and that something is still alive today. I am not a Methodist by profession, but that something is still there today. I can retrace my thoughts back to Roger Williams and many other founders of the different sectarian religions. There was something there, and that something still lives today. And naturally, we speak often of Judaism, how God through Moses led the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. Many of the people through prejudice still have a mind against the Jewish people from a national point of view, as though from a racial point of view, because of their religion. And yet God led the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt through Moses, and through them the Bible was handed down to us, our people, to the Western civilization. It is wonderful. So I comprehend with the good in all people and recognize it wheresoever it is found. We are looking forward, as aforesaid, to the people through education and through relationship and fellowship, coming into that great atonement, to express that universal brotherhood of man and the conscious realization of the fatherhood of God. Then, as you might have thought, Father turns toward Mrs. Robert Snellenberg as he says this and asks, what is your name again? Mrs. Snellenberg. Mrs. Snellenberg. Mrs. Snellenberg says, Mrs. Snellenberg. Father says, Mrs. Snellenberg, your sons and daughters and your immediate family will be more protected than you could have imagined they could have been by your efforts individually to establish for yourself and your own self as a lineage, a name with divisibility. But with that which we often say in pledging our allegiance to our flag, we are one nation indivisible with liberty and justice for all. When we become to be one family indivisible, we will have liberty and justice for all, and your family in its entirety will be in the number. Father and Mrs. Snellenberg laugh merrily together. Then Father continues, "We have families who are believers and followers and admirers that have not made any denial or separated themselves from each other. I mention that because so many would think you leave your husband, or you leave your wife, or you leave your children, and this, that, and the other. When you know the truth will unite you into this infinite whole, and when you become to be in that universal brotherhood of man, you will be closer in reality, and will love each other better internationally, nationally, and internationally, than you could have dared love them individually or personally, or I might say, could have loved them locally or lineagely as your personal physical lineage." What said the Scriptures concerning this mystery? "No man has forsaken all these things, lest he gain an hundredfold more in this present time." It is a great lineage with which we are now connected and united, and all of the peoples and their respective families will eventually have the right to life, liberty, and the reality of happiness by realizing we are one nation, indivisible. I pray that they may be one, even as we are one. By being one nation, indivisible, and by being one family, indivisible, we bring out that perfect picture of that universal brotherhood of man and the realization of the fatherhood of God, and our family is also included. Without it, I see families suffering and dying. As I said the other day, how can anyone stand to see the destruction of little children, as they are at times, burned alive in their homes? I have read of so much recently, and heard of it over the radio. Their families could not save them. It takes something more than mortal to command and to reach their conditions. But if they are in this universal concept of Christ as God to them and as their Father, not necessarily Father Divine as a person, but you have prayed, those of you of the Christian world have prayed to God, "Our Father, which art in heaven." God is your Father, and when you trust Him implicitly, honestly, and sincerely, regardless to what religion with which you may be affiliated, God can and will protect you. But you cannot be protected effectively if you live in self and selfishness, inequality and division, and live for yourself alone. I often think of a message that was given once, "Live not for yourself alone." It was a story, of course. No doubt the majority of you have heard it. Some say it was a fairy tale, and some say it was actually true, and it is brought out in poetry. It says, "Once, when the good St. Peter lived in the world below, he walked about his preaching just as he did, you know. He came to the door of a cottage in traveling around the earth, where a little woman was baking cakes in the ashes on the hearth. And being faint with fasting, for the day was almost done, he asked her from her store of cakes to give him a single one. Therefore she needed another," Father demonstrates, "but still a smaller one. But it looked when she turned it over as large as the first she had done. So she took a tiny scrap of dough and rolled it flat," Father demonstrates, "and baked it thin as a wafer, but she would not depart with that. She said, 'My cakes do seem so small when I eat of them myself, they are yet too large to give away,' so she put it upon the shelf," Father says dramatically. The story goes, then when the good St. Peter grew angry, for he was hungry and faint, and was sure such a woman was enough to try a saint. The guests laugh merrily as Father continues. So he said, "You shall build as the birds do, by getting your scanty food, by boring and boring and boring all day," Father demonstrates, "in the hard, dry wood." Up she went through the chimney, never speaking a word, and out of the top flew a woodpecker, for she was changed to a bird. The scallop cap she had on her head, that was left the same, with all the rest of her clothes burned as black as the coal in the flame. So this is the lesson she teaches: live not for yourself alone, lest someday you may need to pity for something to be your own. Because you won't have anything if you live for yourself alone. Resounding applause comes forth volitionally from the guests. Then Father continues speaking as follows. If the woman that Elijah desired to give him something to eat from a meal, the barrel she had, and she only had a little for herself, she had not given it to him, and somewhat universalized that motherly love, or act or deed, whichever, even if she did not have the love, her meal barrel would not have been filled or restored as it was. No doubt the majority of you have heard that story. That is a story in the Bible where the prophet asked the woman to give him something to eat, and her son was then at the point of death, and he did not talk on so much giving it to the son, or you should do so much for the son, but when she did for someone else other than her son, and became a little more, I might say, motherly to a stranger, and universalized, in other words, socialized her love, her mother love for someone else, why then the child was instantaneously healed, and her meal barrel was instantaneously filled. Therefore she gained the abundance of the fullness through giving up her personal sovereignty to that extent, as it may be termed, as that of her family. Such as the average person would think, I have a right to take care of my family and not to give something to someone else when I am in need and when they are in need. But because she was willing, after the prophet gave her a little information, to make the sacrifice to that end, her son's life was saved and he was restored to health, and her meal barrel was automatically filled when it was just about empty. It was only enough to make a cake or so for the child. So it teaches all the way through the Bible to be not confined to your own lineage, not be confined or bound to the servitude of yourself, to extend it only to your own nationality, but universalize it and extend it to others as well as to yourself and your own family. You cannot lose by so doing. By giving to the world the best you have, the best will come back to you. But if you try to hoard up everything you have for self, and do not allow someone else to have it other than that of your immediate family, you may not be able to come into possession of that which you are anticipating. You may anticipate gaining great things, but the gain will come only through the sacrificing. You gain by giving and not by getting. At this point, Father laughs merrily and then says in all seriousness, "It is more blessed to give than to receive." And that is not a supposition. My experience. It is wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. It is more blessed to give without any thought of remuneration or any thought of anything in return for that which we have done or are doing. It always returns. One writer said, "Give to the Lord," or "loan to the Lord," by giving to the poor. When you give to the poor, you lend to the Lord, and that which you give will He pay you again. One writer said, "No man has forsaken or lost all these things, lest he gain 100-fold more in this present time, and in the world to come, life everlasting." So you bless your family, and bless your nation, and bless your people by living for the good of others locally, individually, and universally. At this juncture, one of the secretaries spoke concerning the bell having rung for Holy Communion service, and thus it was that this profound informal conference terminated, leaving all the guests present filled full of spiritual food for the sustenance of their souls, and about to receive the material food for the sustenance of their bodies from the Savior, yea, Dean of the universe, Father Divine. We thank you, Father and Mother Divine.